Hi guys, now that we know enough about the very basics of Vue.js, like how to create an instance, how to work with templates, the basic of directives, so what they are, how many of them we have, how to write a method, I think it's the perfect time for us to learn a bit more about directives and actually start looking at one of them. And I will start from the VIF directive, which is part of the conditionals directives, and it is like the VIF, the if-else statement in vanilla JavaScript. So the VIF in Vue.js will check if the return value of a certain conditional expression evaluates true, and if so, it will render the HTML element and everything we place it inside it. Since it is a directive, it works on a single element, so a single HTML tag, and if we want to extend its behavior on more than one element, then we have to wrap it inside a template tag. So the vif directive works in the same way the vbind directive works. It has access to properties inside the data object and accepts an expression between its quotes. If the return value of this conditional expression is true, then the directive renders the HTML element. Otherwise, it doesn't. Obviously, we can check for multiple conditions and end up rendering an element if none of these evaluated true. So we can use the else directive. And of course, we can check if a certain condition is true or if another condition is true, and we do that using the else if condition. So we have the if together with the VLs if and VLs directives. So let's start by writing a simple example. So we write some code inside our main.js file to show or add an element. So the first thing that we have to note is that if we have a property inside our data object that returns a Boolean value, it is enough for us to use inside the VIF directive to show or hide an element. So let's see an example of that. So let me move to code. Okay, so we have a simple markup for inside our index.html file. We have the root element, this div with an ID of app, and of course we have the Vue.js CDN imported, and of course we have linked our main.js file. So inside our main.js file, we only have a simple instance, and we assign the Vue instance to the app variable. In here, we have the options object with the EL property, which connects our Vue instance with the root element inside our HTML file. Then we have a data object, and then we have a methods object. So everything so far is pretty basic, so everything we learned so far. So now let's imagine that we have this first, let's put something inside our HTML file, and let's say that we want to render title. Let's put an h1, and then in here we will use the VIF directive and say show title, and then we might have another property inside the data object where we can say movie title. So we don't have neither this property or this one, so we will need to create them inside our data object. So let's move back to the main.js file. Let's do that. Okay. So side by side, so we said we need this movie title I will write it in here and we say, I don't know, shining. And then we have another property, which is this one, show title, and say true. Okay. So now let's see what is going to happen. So this is set to true. We have a title, so a movie title property inside the data object, and then we have this h1 that has this property with the template, the double curly bracket syntax, and it should be shown only if the show title returns a truly value. So let's start this file in live server. Okay, so we have the title and everything seems to be working. Let's change this into false. False. Okay. Let's see if our title is still there, and of course it is not. So you see that based on this condition, our h1 element is shown or not. So that's the basic of a directive. So we have a Boolean value here, and so the if directive takes it inside this quote, so it is a JavaScript expression, so it reads the value of the show title from the view instance, and based on what is inside, it decides to show or not our movie title. So in this case, we are saying that show this title only if the value of the show title is true. And of course, when we changed it to false, it didn't appear anymore onto the page. So obviously, we can put inside the quote of a if directive a simple expression that once it is evaluated to a Boolean value, it will decide if it is the case to render or not our HTML tag. So let's try another example. So let's say that we have in here, so let's comment this out for now. And let's copy it down here. Okay, now let's say that we want to check in here if the if an age property is greater than 18, and in such case we will show the movie title property, so what's in it, so shining, otherwise we won't. And of course we need to change this. Let's comment this out so you have it as a reference, and let's have this age, and let's say this 18. So now I saved the file, and that updated immediately because of the live server. And of course the title is not shown because the age is not greater than 18, but it's equal to 18. So if we change this to equal to, we will see that shining appears. So we have successfully updated this value and used a simple expression inside the if directive to decide what to do with this element. So we wrote an expression inside the if directive, and we checked if the age property was greater than or equal to 18, and if the result of this expression is true, then the h1 is shown, otherwise it is not. So now let's move to a more complex example, and let's add another condition. So let's say that we have another h1. So let's grab this first. Let's comment this out. And I'll still work in here. So pretty much the same. But this time we will do, if it is over 21, we will show the title as it is. And let's carve it again, and we will add another check here. So we will use the else if directive and say if the age is over 18 but under 21, so and age is less than 21, so we check both condition. The age it must be over 18 but must also be under 21, so to make this block of code appear. So we add this movie title, but we add the node watch it with an adult. Okay, so that's our second condition. And now we could do something a bit different inside here. Instead of assigning this property, instead of assigning to this property a value directly, we could do like age and assign to it a user age variable, and of course we need to define this user age, and we add it to a prompt and say what's your age to the user. So we ask this question to the user. It should return to us a number. So let's convert it to a number. So we make sure that we have a number because the prompt gives us only a string. So now at this point, what we have is we ask to the user his age, then we add this value to the view instance, and we are good to go. Movie title, okay, age, okay, let's see, it seems we have an error, but we don't. So let's say we are 19, and of course we have this shining, so the movie title, and watch with an adult. So we have we are showing this line of code 19, but if we say that we are over 21, we should be shown only the title. And of course it works. Now we could do another thing now to make things a bit different. So we could show a different message if the user is under 18 at this point. So we could use here the VLs directive. So if the user is neither greater than older than 21 or its age is between 18 and 21. So if it's younger than 18, we will show a different message like, sorry, you are too young to see this movie. So let's add this VLs directive inside our let's still use the h1, and this time say we VLs and say here the movie title again, but also we say sorry, to see this movie. Okay, so we show a different message again. Let's type 15 and sure enough we have sorry, you're too young to see this movie. So here of course we used another the other VLs directive. So this is always a conditional directive. So it's made of three directives: the VLs if, and VLs directives. All these three directives work together to let us decide what our program should do and how it should behave based on multiple conditions. So here we have this h1 with the VLs directive, and if the if this is the case, we will show this message, otherwise we will show one of these two. And that's pretty much all we need to know about conditional rendering to be able to move forward with our first project. But if you want to learn more about this topic, I'll leave you a link in the description below. Next, we will need to learn a few more things to be able to move forward and start building our first project, the simplified Twitter clone. So the next topic is loops. See you there.